it wasn't.
Yeah.
I was like, and now I.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
You're relative.
Well, now that you're here, we're good.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Oh, you ready?
Hi, everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Nice to have you here in the mist, in the Florida morning mist. This morning. Nice to be. Thank you very much. Nice. That's nice. We're gonna dive right in this morning. Not into the mist. Dive into the mist this morning. Oof. Tough. We're on page 170 is where we're gonna start this morning. 170.
Mode ani lefanecha melecha evekayam shechezarta binishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha mode ani lefanecha melecha evekayam shechezarta binishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha
Nisim b'chol yom, our daily blessings and miracles. 175.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sachvi v'na le'avchin ben yom u'ben layla.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, atzir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, albish harumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layaev koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir she'eina meinai utnu mamei afapai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani ben chorim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Amen.
Psukei de Zimra 183.
Baruch she'amar ve'haya olam.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Oseh v'reshit.
Baruch Omer ve'oseh.
Baruch gozer u'mkayem.
Baruch merachem al haaretz.
Baruch merachem al habriyot.
Baruch meshalem sachar tov lireav.
Baruch halal v'kayam lanetzach.
Baruch podeh umatzil. Baruch shemo.
Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came to be.
Blessed is the one.
Blessed is the one who continually authors creation.
And blessed is the one whose word is deed.
Blessed is the one who decrees and fulfills.
Blessed is the one who is compassionate towards the
Blessed
world.
is the one who is compassionate towards all creatures.
Blessed is the one who is irreverent.
Blessed is the one who exists for all time, ever enduring. Baruch atah Adonai,
Melech mehulal batishbachot. We continue now. Shochen Ad, 192.
Shochen ad marom vekadosh shemo vechatzuv ranenu tzadikim Adonai aisharim navatehila befi sharim titalal udivrei tzadikim titbarach uvelshon chasidim titromam uvekerev kedoshim titkadash ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל ברינה יתפאר שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kari veimru. Amen. Yehishmei Rabba mevorach, leolam lol mehamaya yitbarach, yitbarach veishtabach, vitpar vitroma mitrasei, vitadar vitale vitalal, shemei de kudesha berichu leila. מן כל בחטא ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא ואמרו, אמן.
We stand for the Baruch Hu 195.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach
לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יוצר אור וחושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. Please be seated. We continue Ahava Rabbah 198.
Ahava Rabbah haftanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla gedola vitera Chamalta leinu Ba'avur avoteinu Ve'imotenu Shebatchu v'cha V'talmedeim chukei chayim Ve'ha'erenenu b'toratecha Ve'dahabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha Ve'yachel levavenu Le'ahava u'lira et shemecha Ve'lo nevosh Ve'lo nikalem Ve'lo nikashel Le'olam va'ed Ki v'shem koshecha Hagadol v'anora v'hatachnu Nagila v'nismecha Nagila v'nismecha v'shuatecha Baruch atah Adonai Habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Page 200.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
201.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
202.
ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בטיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. We continue with our song of redemption, Mi Chamocha, on page 204.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמך אספת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחי נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amidah begins on 205.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevii Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל.
Kedusha is on page 208.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. הכנו אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לא ימוש לעולם ועד, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We continue silently now our own prayers in our hearts or following along in our Siddur, beginning here on page 210 through page 219. Whenever you're finished, please be seated.
Ose shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ose shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen, amen. Ose shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen.
We continue with Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for reading the Torah, on this Shabbat morning, which is on page 244.
Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, vein kemaasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor v'hador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai himloch le'olam ha'ed. Adonai oz le'amo hitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
Please stand.
Av harachamim, eitiva v'tzuncha et Zion, timneh chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'chal levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim.
246.
Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udvar Adonai mirushalayim.
248.
Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlul Adonai iti uneromema Shemo Yachtav. Lecha Adonai hagedula ve'hagevura ve'atiferet ve'anetzach ve'hahon. Chol bashamayim uvaretz ki chol bashamayim uvaretz lecha Adonai hamamlacha ve'amit nahaseh lechol rosh Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Vehishtachavu, Ladom Raglav Kadoshu, Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Vehishtachavu, Lehar Kodsho, Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Please be seated. We are going to read a little Torah right now from the Torah portion called Mishpatim. It is, thank you, it's Exodus 21. Exodus 21. Exodus 21. Exodus 21. You're reading from the beginning? 21:1. 21:1 is where we are reading from. 21:1. 21:1. Anyone want to do the Aliyah for us this Shabbat morning? Susie, please. Excellent. 21:1 in our Tanakh, or that's not the verse that we're on, though. It's the beginning. It's 21, chapter 21. And if you're following along for the blessings, it's on page 250. Ta'amod.
Sarah bat Chaim v'Leah.
Sarah bat Chaim v'Leah l'Aliyat Torah.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Morach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ve'ele hamishpatim asher tasim lifneihem ki tikne eved ivri sheshanim yavod uvashvi'it yetzei lechofshi chinam im bekafo yavo begafo yetzei im ba'al ishahu vayatza ishto imo im adonav yiten lo isha ve'ada lo vanim o vanot האישה וילדיה תהיה לאדוניה והוא יצא בכפו ואם אמור יאמר העבד אהבתי את אדוני את אשתי ואת בניי לא יצא חופשי והגישו אדוניו אל האלוהים והגישו אל הדלת או אל המזוזה ורצה אדוניו את אוזנו במרצע ועבדו לעולם.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen.
We're going to raise and dress the Torah now, so that's on page 252. And we'll ask you to stand, please, and invite, I don't know, who's going to raise and lift today? Who's going to raise and lift? Yeah? You guys? All right, great. All right, come on over. 252. 252. 252. At the bottom, 252. וזאת התורה ששם משה לפני בני ישראל ויד משה.
תורה, 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 ציווה לנו משה. תורה, Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe.
Please be seated. So we are in the Torah portion of Mishpatim. And we are going to not start at the beginning. We're going to move a little bit further into it. So, and we're going to do some major jumping today because I think there are different units. Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if we wanted to use those because we're jumping. So all right, great. Hey, thanks. We have varying Tanachim if you want. All right, great. Do you want the women's Torah commentary today? You were just kind of you were feeling it. Great, it's great. Do you want? You can if people want. Sometimes people don't want. If people want, we have alternate translations if you want. Different publications if you're interested. All right. So we are going to be doing a bunch of jumping, and the opening statement is that Mishpatim, which I talk about a lot, just means laws. However, there are two types of laws, right? There's a mishpat and there's a chok. And a chok is the because I said so type of law. That's God just saying because I said so. We're not asking, we're not discussing. Shabbat, for instance, is a chok. Kashrut is a chok. These are because I said so, you're doing it. Whether or not the Reform movement does it or not, that's a whole other conversation that we're not going to have today. But there are mishpatim. And the Torah portion this week is called mishpatim, and these are laws that are discussable. Right? So because, and I often bring this up, that the Hebrew word for a courthouse is a beit mishpat, a house of mishpatim, essentially, because it is a house of laws, but they are laws that are discussable. Right? It's not a beit chukim, not a house of those kind of laws where literally you'd walk in there and everyone would just be like, because I told you so, you can leave now. That's not how a courthouse works. There are dialogues, there are lawyers, there are conversations, and so we piece together how laws work or don't work. That's what mishpatim are. That's the premise, and so we're going to jump around throughout the Torah portion a little bit today and look at certain sentences, and I want us to figure out what the discussions might be from those sentences, right? Keep your mishpat hat on, as if we are in a courthouse, because this is what will happen, by the way, going forward with Jewish text. The origin will be here, in mishpatim, and then the expanse will be enormous, the discussions about certain things, enormous, that are still being had today, by the way, all the way until now. So there's the interpretation of how the laws function, and it's still being interpreted. So that's what we're talking about today. Ready? Let's do our blessing. What's that? Almost like civil law. I mean, but it's religious law that turns into civil law, and we'll talk about that. That's the plan. Let's do the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, let's start on. So we're on 21, verse 14 is where we're starting. 21:14. 21:14. 21:14. Go ahead.
When a person schemes against another and kills through treachery, you shall take that person from my very altar to be put to death.
Okay, so what's this? What's that? Right, right. So it's murder. Why do we know it's murder? Well, how does it say so? I mean, I'm saying just don't just say it says so. Tell me why it says so. Schemes, right? Schemes. All right. So schemes. So when a man schemes against another man and kills him treacherously, right? Why do we need the word treacherously here? Yes, it's not accidental. It's thought out, right? It's thought out. You shall take him from my altar, meaning he is no longer part of the system. And once he's no longer part of the system, what happens to him next? We kill him. Yes, right. So, and by the way, does yours say kills? What does your translation say? Another kills him? No. At the beginning, it says when a man schemes against another and all of yours says kills? Because the Hebrew actually says murders. So it's different between killing and murdering. So the translations sometimes don't get it right, but the Hebrew doesn't say kills. The Hebrew says murder, which, by the way, are very different. Right? Killing someone and murdering someone it's very, very different. Neither are good, clearly, but one is certainly less intentional than the other in a lot of situations. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. So that's the kind of to sort of know that you're going to kill them, right? To plan out the killing, or in this case, really it's murder, right? Because it's premeditated. Would you think we would call this premeditated murder? Right. So there's premeditated murder. So just to show you as an example, to jump into a very complicated one, and then the conversation we're not going to have right now either, by the way, is that does this person deserve to die? Right? This is the conversation about capital punishment, about death penalties, right? Because we take the Torah, but now look how it functions or doesn't function in society, because now we have the dialogue, if we were going to have the dialogue, which we're not going to do, but if we're going to have the dialogue about, do we agree with this? Do we think that if someone schemes to murder someone, that the penalty for them should just be dead? Or, nowadays, right, there are lawyers that discuss this, and was it premeditated, and was it a mistake, and did they really plan it, and maybe they spend just some jail time, and then there's parole, right? All of these things change the system, but the system is in place, and here's where it comes from, and it's literally in the Torah. So the same book that gives us the creation story, and Abraham, and all that stuff, gives us gives us also these kind of things to think about, which is an interesting, less poetic section of the Torah. Okay, we're jumping. All right, we're jumping to verse 24. Well, let's just do 22. We'll start. Yes, go ahead. Yes. So that's a fabulous clarifying question, and thank you for asking. So we do not live a Torah Judaism. Our Jewish lives in 2023, any Jew, regardless of your denomination or practice, any Jew is not living a Torah life. We are living a Talmudic rabbinic life, because the rabbis take these statements and digest them and further digest them and maneuver them into. That's why I said that these are such small statements, and they become volumes of dialogue later into the Mishnah, into the Talmud, into commentaries, into Midrash, into different conversations, all the way until now. So not necessarily. So someone who maybe is living a more ultra-Orthodox life does not automatically think that they should, because based on this. They can think that based on other rulings, other conversations, other rabbinic commentaries. They might still think that, but not necessarily directly from this statement to 2023, because there's too much space in between this and now of commentaries and rabbis and the volumes of the Mishnah and the volumes of the Talmud and the volumes of Tosafot and the volumes of text upon text upon text that's going to just build and build and build and build and build. And we're going to get to another one, by the way, that's very much like this. You'll see it in a few minutes. That is maybe the most problematic and the most interesting. So we'll talk about it. But so there are people who do that, and how you interpret text. How you interpret text, right? There's something called pshat, which is that you literally read the text like it's written. I don't want your commentary. The Torah is written the way it's written. I believe the Torah, so it's in here. The practice, though, is still not necessarily going to be, even though I read it literally, might not be practiced literally. Because everyone has agreed, whether you like the Mishnah or the Talmud, everyone has agreed that we're abiding by it. Even though we're either Reformed, Conservative, or ultra-Orthodox, Reconstructionist, it doesn't matter. We've decided that we're abiding by these laws because that's what the Seder looks the way it does because of the rabbis. The Shabbat times that we know are because of the rabbis. The practice of certain holidays. All of these, the invention of a mikvah is all rabbinic. All these things are all rabbinic introductions based on what was in the text. So it's a great clarifying question. For someone who is a lawyer, this is a great Torah portion because you're picking up all these different pieces and trying to figure out what are nuances and how we play with them. So, all right, great question. We're on 22.
When two or more parties fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact, the payment to be based on reckoning.
Okay, so we're not going to go into the ownership of the female right now because we have our Bible hats on. So no 2023 hats allowed for this statement right now. But there it is, that there are these damages. And damages, by the way, is going to, you see it says damages right there? So damages are going to get a volume. One entire book in the Talmud is just called damages. So what does that mean? When you damage property, when you damage someone, when you damage a situation, when you damage someone's garden, when you damage their animal, any of those things now are going to, the expanse of the word damages is going to be enormous, all from one little sentence that says damages. Yes, who's climbing in from Zoom? Gail. Right. That's totally correct. It's not murder. Because Judaism believes that life begins at birth, right? Not at conception or inception or any of those things, right? Only at birth. So, yes. And by the way, since we don't have our 2023 hats on, it also makes sense because it's the man's property and there's a payment for it. So again, don't put on the 23 hat. It's going to just really mess with all of us. With all of us, yes. With the law on abortion, right? So we don't have time for that one, but I'll say quickly that the mother is the most important thing. So mom is most important still, no matter what. So more so than the fetus, but we're not going down that road right now. That is a whole other conversation, by the way, that we can have, and we can have a class on it and talk about that. But that's a fascinating road to go down, which we're not doing now. But it's a great question because clearly that falls under damages or situation, or it falls into actually two volumes of Talmud, two different volumes of Talmud. So, in the text, because it's in the realm of the situation. So yes. Right. It's still though to this day, mom is always chosen over the fetus, and still, according to Judaism, life begins at birth, still. So those two factors are way heavy on all the dialogue, but if we had a larger one, we could have one, yeah, for sure. All right, but please keep going, 24 now. Oh, sorry, 23.
But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise.
Okay, so but if some other damage, here's the word damage again. So remember I told you damages is going to have just volumes of damages, right? So if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be this list. Do we like this list? I brought this up a little bit last night. Do we like this list? Do you like life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise? That means if you bruise me, I get to bruise you back. That means if you burn me, I burn you back. That means if you wound me, I wound you back. Are we good with that? Which I'll say, by the way, like I always like to say in this Torah portion, if you refer to Fiddler on the Roof, what Tevye says about this section, he says, if we followed this way, the whole world would be blind and toothless. Right? So that's what that's what Tevye says. Yes. Yeah. Nice. Okay, great. So again, if you're a pshatist though, so if you this falls under the category of mishpatim again, right? This is a conversation for us to have if this is what the punishment should be, right? Should it be bruise for bruise, right? If you hit me and now I'm bruising, should I be able to punch you back, right? Now, right? This is the dialogue we're having that the Torah allows us to have because, and then ultimately, is it not really bruise for bruise, eye for eye? Is it damages? Right? Is it, now let's look at what the damage looks like and see what damages look like. Yeah, 1 and then 2.
If this was to be taken literally and actually practice specific eye for eye back and burn for burn, who's doing the burning? Is it the victims doing back to them? Because in today's judicial system, we don't have the victims enact the punishment. There's a good reason for that, because they're emotional and they may not have equitable or just punishment. There could be a method for that. But who's doing the actual punishment like that?
Who's doing the whatever who's ruling over this? You're saying? Well, so this is at this moment it's really just Moses, right? It's the Mosaic system that's ruling over it because there's no system yet, right? I mean, we just had Yitro, so Yitro tells Moses, "What are you doing to yourself? Set up some kind of a system for yourself, right? Create some hierarchy of the heads of tribes." So there's probably some kind of a ruling system of elders, but it doesn't say specifically, but probably because that's set up last week, cleverly. Now, so it's set up last week, and now we have the actual examples of what might happen, right? So some version of it is happening, and there's some kind of a judicial system that's created because someone has to decide. Don't forget there's also something called cities of refuge, which were safe havens, because if I was like in the first sentence, if I schemed and murdered someone, you're done. But if I inadvertently kill someone, you can go to the city of refuge so that the family can't come, they're not allowed to come into the city of refuge. It's protected so they can't come and kill you. Right? Because there's the famous story of the person who's using the axe, right? And then the axe handle comes, the axe comes off the handle and spins backwards and kills someone. That's not premeditated, right? I was wrong place, wrong time. And what's that? It's accidental, but someone's dead, right? But someone's dead. So that person can go to the city of refuge, not have the family of the deceased come after you. But now here's the conversation, right? This is why the Talmud's so good, because the conversation of that exact incident is, was it the fault of the person with the axe? Was it the person who was behind him, even though there was a sign there that said, axe, chopping in progress? Was it the person who made the resin and the glue that connects the handle to the axe? This is the 4th time this has happened. Maybe they're not doing a good job making axes. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like now you have to build the story about whose fault it is because ultimately someone's dead, right? But that person can run and not be killed immediately by the family into the city of refuge because we don't have a system yet, a jail system, right, that provides that they can go to jail and figure that out and then adjudicated and not, right? So, but those details aren't there yet. But all this coming from the Torah portion because it's developing from these small little sentences that grow into, like I said, paragraphs, into books, into chapters, and into tractates, and then commentaries. Yes?
I was just going to comment that, especially today, it would be the manufacturer, right, who created it, they would take the blame.
Right, hypothetically. But what if they have a pristine record? Like, what if it's never happened before? Right? So then you go to the employee, right? There's an employee number. Right? Joe made this axe. So since Joe made this axe, and Joe's not been doing such a good job, maybe it's Joe's fault. I'm just saying you have to go and do your research, right, and say where all these things come from. But all the steps have to be taken backwards from the incident, and that's why the Torah is so good because it shows us this. Yes. Yes.
My first question was, before we came to this, I used to do a little review. Mishpatim, the term is used ordinances.
Okay.
Ordinances means the interpreted relating to the term of what may be taking place.
Yeah.
Not necessarily we're talking about an absolute law.
It's not an absolute law. It's a law, though, but not an absolute law, which is why, like in a courthouse, those aren't absolute. Those aren't absolute. We're going to play with it.
The reason this is important
Yeah.
in this section is because we're a communal faith and communal people. And we're teaching and learning how we get along with each other. And all these ordinances that we talk about set a standard, if you will, a standard of care is what their law offers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the degrees that you execute that standard of care and how you punish for it, or how you live with the community of the act that was already done.
Okay. Nice. That's one.
In perspective, that was the answer to
Oh, yeah, that was a combo? All right. Nice.
I brought standard of care,
Okay.
which deals with the acts and the rest. But as I read through and preparing for it, that helped me put my mind in perspective of what we're going to talk about today. Is that all these things are written because we were living as a community. We weren't living
Absolutely.
individually. So we had to treat whatever the situation was, where we wanted to be treated for others as well.
Absolutely. Now, that's first of all very insightful, and second of all, so Gold Star. Also, every time you say Gold Star, I can't help it. I think of Gold Star. You know what Gold Star is? It's very good Israeli beer. So every time you say Gold Star, I think of Israeli beer. Just so you know when you say that. You have a Gold Star beer? Oh, so I think of the beer. I'm thinking of really good cold. Very great. Okay, fine. Yes.
My last comment, do we know how Moses reacts to himself being murdered to these laws?
Aha.
He has to face consequences?
Interesting. So no one's calling him a murderer necessarily, right? So no one's calling him a murderer in this stage, right? Only does later commentary come back to reflect on the sort of overview of Moses' life to say he was a murderer, right? I mean, because right? It wasn't necessarily premeditated, his murder, but it was murder because it's sort of an instinctual murder more than a premeditated murder. But that's a great question, and that's perhaps why he is overseeing the court system, but maybe he is not the adjudication system that's there. And interesting that his father-in-law comes the previous week to tell him, what are you doing? You need help and a system to be able to handle all of this because you can't do it all on your own. So, great comment. Yes? Right. I think that puts us into the God question and humanity question. So I think it's two different realms of questions, and I think that the God question might be for another time, actually, which is a very good question and a very difficult question. I think that this Torah portion seeks to deal with the relationship between human and human. Yes, and not necessarily God and human, right? Because relationships in Judaism are always said to have ben adam lamakom and ben adam lechavero. You have a relationship between a human and a relationship between yourself and God. So we have these duality of our relationship is both, that we are responsible for this relationship and this relationship, right? So there's a duality to each. I think that this Torah portion particularly focuses on the ben adam lechavaro, the person-to-person relationship. But that doesn't mean there aren't dialogues about God's place in how the complicated nature of helping dismantle certain groups of people happens, right? You don't hear about the Jebusites at some point, right? So there's a reason why God at some point, tells Saul, which he doesn't do, look, all the Amalekites, who are the people who are against the Israel, and he says, I put them all here for you. Literally, every Amalekite is sitting in this one encampment. Everyone, every single one of them. Go down there and kill them all. And then the text says, and God says, the men, the women, the children, don't keep any of the belongings. It's a complicated piece of text. It's not in the Torah. It's outside the Torah. It's in the prophets. But that's a conversation for us to have some other time. I think these are like the detail minutia, and I think Harry's hitting it about relationships, right? Because also don't forget the meta picture. We're still slaves. We're like 2 portions out of slavery. We have no idea what we're doing. The Israelites are a complete disaster. We're no clue. So there's still a slave mentality. So to try and create a system for them to follow and appreciate that there are boundaries, there are systems, there are conversations to be had, I think makes sense why it's done that way. Yes?
So what happens in the case where someone goes and kills someone else? It's murder. They murder someone else.
Yeah.
Okay, but he, does it still stand? And he has a reason for having done that. Does it mean that he can't be heard? Or does he?
Well, according to this system, no one has the right to murder someone. So it's in the commandments, right? It's the 6th commandment.
What if he kills this person because that person went and killed his child or his wife?
You're not allowed to do that. The system doesn't allow you to do that. Possibly, but that's what I'm saying. This is the beginning of these dialogues, right? Possibly, if someone murders someone, there's capital punishment, and possibly we decide that they should die. Possibly, that's why there are death penalties, right? That's why there are lethal injections. That's why there's all this stuff, right? That's why we have these dialogues. That some states allow this, and it's transferred all the way from this time. Yeah.
What happens if a person hires someone to do a murder?
Yeah.
Then that person that hired executes on the contract.
Yes.
The person that hired didn't do the murder,
Right.
but they schemed for it.
Yes.
So
It's the same. I actually believe there was a case. I'm going to remember it. It's within a 10-year window. There was a case in New York between, it was an ultra-Orthodox family, and I think that the wife was an aguna. And aguna means that it means chained, because a get, a dissolution of marriage can only be given by a man in an ultra-Orthodox system. So he can do whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. She cannot, and nor can she get out of the marriage. So she has to live with it forever and ever and ever, no matter what, according to an ultra-Orthodox system, till 2023. I believe that he was maybe one of the worst humans on earth, and yet she could not leave him because she wasn't allowed to. So I believe that she put a hit on him to have him killed. And I think that the person that this is true, we can look it up, this is true. And the person that she hired to murder her husband was an undercover FBI agent. And so the whole scheme was caught, but the dialogue was it okay? Because the guy was awful to other people. He was awful to her. Apparently their lives were horrible, but she couldn't leave, and she begged. She went to the Beit Din. She went to the Orthodox court. They denied her. It was this whole thing, and so the only way she could get out of it was to have him killed. And yet he wasn't killed because it was an operation that the FBI was. So I'm just saying, it's an interesting questions, because we're still happening today, and the Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox system is still trying to run with it. We're still trying to, from this week's Torah portion, is still trying to figure out the details. I'm getting some of those details wrong, but I'm positive that something like this went down in the last 10 years, and it was in New York. I'm positive that something like this went down, and you sort of felt for her to think, oh, well, maybe it wasn't such a bad deal. Like maybe that should have worked, and she should have been able to have the hit on him and kill him. But it's a terrible thing to say. But and she tried. I think there are like a record of 5 or 6 or 7 attempts for her to go to the court system, to the Orthodox court system, and each time she was rejected. So she had nothing else to do except for put out a hit on him, which we can't do, because that's not okay. All right, we have 1 or 2 more comments, and we're going to wrap up. Yes.
Okay, so I think it's a travesty that the Orthodox feel as though Reform, Constructionist, Conservative movements are nothing when it comes to granting a get.
Right. So let's save a get conversation for some other time. I will tell you that there's something called the Lieberman Clause. Lieberman Clause is a conservative addendum to an ultra-Orthodox ketubah, and it is now a well-used document even for the modern Orthodox, even though it's a conservative rabbi's addendum, and so many ketubot have an ultra-Orthodox strict ketubah written for them with the Lieberman Clause put into it, which allows the dissolution of marriage by both parties of an ultra-Orthodox written ketubah. So that's a quick response to your question. So that does exist. You can look it up. It's on ketubah.com, for instance. You can a lot of people want to get it because they want to get a traditional ketubah, but they add Lieberman Clause into it, which means that they both have the rights to dissolve the marriage if they want to, not just the male, because in an ultra-Orthodox ketubah, only the male has the right to dissolve a marriage. So, yes?
I'm really confused about what you said about this is that the Torah is talking to, 2 parshas after that the Israelites are still almost past slavery.
They're barely, yeah.
And then it says here, Ki et ish avdo, if a man hits his servant. And we're talking about ex-slaves, and now we're talking about if they have slaves.
Right, I think it's prescriptive, because they're not there yet. This is just giving them a law system so that whenever they figure out the functionality, it's there already.
It's okay to have slaves?
Well, okay, good slaves. Everyone's bringing up very big conversations. Slaves are also a conversation we can have. The slaves usually in the Torah are not the same slaves that we think of in more modern time of slavery. Still not great, but it was more of an indentured servitude, more of a butlership that existed rather than a slave as in someone who's chained and beaten. It's not that kind of slave. So I'm trying to answer very large questions with very short sentences as best as I possibly can. Yes? You're going to say something very short. I'll have a short response. Great. This is going to be great. Yes.
My high school boyfriend is in jail now for taking out a contract on somebody. He was Orthodox young man.
I might have to take some longer time to talk about this, actually. Wait a second. We're going to postpone that. We're going to call the bar mitzvah family and tell them we need another 20 minutes because I want to hear about this. Go on.
Was told by his then girlfriend that her niece was being sexually abused by her father, and could he please arrange for him to be killed? And I believe that he did it to help the child.
Yeah.
And no one agreed with me. He's in prison now.
Wow. Okay. Yes. And similarly to the, I mean, it's similarly to the life that this woman was living that I mentioned. If I remember, I will look it up. This is an actual story that went down, and I'm positive it was less than 10 years ago. So, all right, I want to end with this, even though we're not going to get to it, but I want to end with this because I have to. I can't not mention this one. So it is, where was it? It's 23, chapter 23, 19b. Chapter 23, verse 19b. You can do all of 19, but I really just want to talk about B. 19b. Here we go. Yeah, just you go read it.
You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
There it is. So, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. You should not boil the calf in its mother's milk. And this is the example of a mishpat. This is the best example of a not a law, it's not a chok because we don't know what it is yet. Because it needs time to develop. So eventually it turns into a kashrut law, but the way that kashrut functions in 2023 is not based on this sentence. I mean, I'm sorry, it's based on this sentence, but not literally. This is why the Mishnah, the commentary, the Talmud spends volumes trying to figure out what this line means, because the rabbis were puzzled on what this means. And this line, by the way, ultimately tells us we can't have a cheeseburger. But nothing in this sentence says that we can't. So because basically it says, don't boil a calf in its mother's milk, fine, I will take the milk from the other calf. Right? Why can't I slaughter, based on this, why can't I slaughter one animal over here, kosherly, right? Make the hamburger patty, and then milk the cow from over here, and put the cheese on the milk. I'm fine, according to this. According to this, I'm fine to do that. But the rabbis were saying that doesn't work that way, because what if I sell you a bunch of dairy cows, and then ultimately, and then ultimately one of the dairy cows you actually start to slaughter, and then now by chance, because I have the slaughterhouse for the beef, and I figure that I don't have to deal with you because you're never going to slaughter any of your cows, then the milk somehow connects. The example I always give is, if you ever have a cheeseburger at McDonald's, just bringing it up, right? The likelihood of the meat and the cheese coming from the same animal is almost impossible. But is there zero chance? It's not a zero chance. There is a almost zero chance, but the possibility exists that it's the same animal, right? And so because of that, you can't have a cheeseburger. Chickens are now put into the system because it looks like you're putting dairy onto meat, and because of that, if it's in your sandwich, if it's in your sandwich, you can't do it. So we have to end, because we have to go in a minute. So, but yes. So, Shabbat Shalom. So I just wanted to bring that last bit up so that we can have the thoughtful flow of dialogue about this going forward, is that these kind of laws are the ones that need to be interpreted, need to be pushed and pulled, and aren't just like, okay, I got you, I'm doing it. That they're all malleable. Plus, I like the word malleable. I like to use the word malleable as much as I can. It makes me sound really smart. Yes, you get the last comment. Shatnez. Shatnez, yes, wool and linen. Yeah, you can't miss the two. You can't mix the two. All right, we are going to take a moment to think of those in our community who are in need of healing, physical, emotional, or spiritual healing. Yeah. Wow, that's so nice. I know we think of her every week. That's great news. That's great news. That's great news to go into Mishaberach. So we're thinking of anyone who might be in need of the healing, the emotional, spiritual, physical healing. If you're thinking of someone and you want to share their name, please share their name at this time. משבח אבותינו ואמותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את החולים. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, להחלימם ולרפאתם ולהחזיקם, וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, השתה בגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Becca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion, for their health be restored and their strength be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. As together we say, Amen. We are going to return the Torah to the Ark, 256, and together we stand. Oh, thanks, Robin.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niska shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayaharem keren le'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, Livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Eitz chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomcheha me'ushar deracheha דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Aleinu, we can remain standing. 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We transition our thoughts to Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. In the period of Shloshim, we think of Brooke Fernandez, Irving Goldfarb, Natalie Siegel. And our yortzites that occur for us this week, Nathan Ackerman, Sylvia Gertrude Applebaum, Solomon Barr, Arthur Kahn, Martha Edelman, Barry Garfield, Louis Gershon, Robert Herskowitz, Sheldon Kaplan, Abner M. Kalowitz, Gertrude Kleeman, Edward A. Cornmill, Fanny Krimsky, Edith Lean, Belle Ogaz, Saul Plotnick, Irving Polerstock, Sarah Ryder, Teresa Schwartz, Jean Sayre, Lottie Sider, Stanley Spielvogel, Arthur Tools, Sherry Wagner, Mort Wiener. To those names, we had any name that you would like to add at this time. Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, 294. Yitgadal v'kadash me rabah, ba'almad yivrach cherutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach leolam ulmei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalaz shmei lekudesha brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran ba'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israels. Together we say, amen. Please be seated. Very quick announcements that Dan Nichols will be here next week, finally. We're talking about him for a few weeks, but if you have not if you don't already know, he'll be here on Friday, he'll be here on Saturday night, and he'll be here on Sunday. You're welcome to come to all of them. Friday night's going to be services. Saturday night is sponsored by SLJ, but not only for SLJ. So it is not just a religious school program. It is like a campfire, folk songs, there'll be s'mores, so come and hang out. We'd love to have everyone there, and then on Sunday is the concert. There's a cost for those tickets, but they're minimal. I believe they're $18 for the tickets to come to see the concert. I think we already have about 75 people coming to the concert. And there'll be food trucks prior to the concert. So if you want to come and get a food truck, and there'll be no cost for the food truck, so you can come and have a little food truck. I believe it's only going to be 2 or 3 food trucks, not like 11 food trucks, but there'll be some food trucks. I believe there'll be at least 1 or 2 like lunch food trucks, and 1 or 2 like a dessert food truck. So come and have food truck stuff with us, and then stay for the concert. The concert starts at 1:30. Just before, probably around noon. Probably around noon. Yeah. So what else? Purim's coming up, and the Purim spiel, including Megillah and Mimosa, which is the day after Purim. So come and hang out with us. Well, there's breakfast brunch that day, and it's studying the real story of Purim, not the kid version of Purim, because it's nothing kiddie about it. It's kind of sinister and twisted. Come for the twisted story, and then a bunch of upcoming things that I can't remember, and I have to go do a bar mitzvah. So yes. So what's that? Let's conclude. You want to conclude with En Kelahenu? It's a nice. I think it's 322. 322.
Ein Keloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkenu, ein Kemoshienu, mi Cheloheinu, mi Chadonenu, mi Chemalkenu, mi Chemoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Adonai Oz Lamoy Ten Adonai Varech et Amo Vashalom. May God give strength unto our people. Continue to bless us with hope and strength and love and peace. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.